The big story of the hour that we are covering. New Delhi is witnessing a remarkable diplomatic moment just days after the US Secretary of State Marco Rubio's engagement with India, where he was for 4 days. New Delhi is now hosting a series of high-profile visits that underscore its growing global importance. Venezuela's acting president Delcy Rodriguez landed in New Delhi and has met Prime Minister Narendra Modi, with energy security and oil supplies featuring prominently in their talks. At the same time, the US ambassador to India, Sergio Gore, is also holding key discussions with the Union Commerce Minister of India, Piyush Goyal, and the United States and India move towards finalizing a major trade deal. Adding to the diplomatic buzz, the UK Foreign Secretary Yevit Cooper is also in India for high-level talks. Having met with the External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar, she is likely to meet the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi as well. In fact, in back-to-back visits, it was the Trade Secretary of United Kingdom, Peter Kyle, who was also in Delhi the last 2 days. All right, the timing, of course, is striking. With global energy markets face uncertainty and geopolitical tensions continue to reshape trade and supply chains, India is engaging with multiple major partners at once. The question is this just a busy week of diplomacy, or is India quietly positioning itself at the center of the changing global order? Let's open up this conversation. On the telecast with me is Madhav Nalapat, the editorial director, The Sunday Guardian. Madhav Nalapat, let's hear it from you with regards to this flurry of activity that is taking place. You know, Sergio Gore, of course, we had the Quad Foreign Ministers meeting, we have the Foreign Secretary of United Kingdom, Trade Secretary of United Kingdom. We even have the Assistant US Trade Representative, Brendan Lynch, who is over here having these very closed-door conversations with regards to finalizing that 1% of the nitty-gritties that remain in signing that trade deal, in the words of Sergio Gore himself. What does this all meetings and diplomacy indicate?
Look, the fact is, Megha, in that 1%, there's Donald Trump and the White House. They want us to buy Venezuelan oil, frankly, in place of Russian oil. Now, the Venezuelans can offer a good market price for the oil. That's fine. They can find a route to us which is reasonably cost effective, so that the landed price of oil is competitive. Well, we can have a look at it. But the point is, you cannot ignore the fact that so far as the Gulf countries are concerned, two factors are there. One, the Iran situation hopefully will come under control with the ceasefire with the US. And as far as Israel is concerned, they are now having discussions with Lebanon on the matter of Hezbollah, and where Hezbollah will not attack Israel, and then the Israelis will also stop their attack. That's the best case scenario. The reality is we have about 10 million, nearly 10 million Indians working in the Middle East. They're sending home valuable foreign exchange. They are a very important source of foreign exchange to us, and the Middle Eastern countries have always been very friendly to us, whether it is the UAE, whether it is Saudi Arabia, whether it is Bahrain, whether it is Qatar. All these countries are countries that the Prime Minister has visited many times. He has built up strong relations. So as far as Delcy Rodriguez is concerned, in a sense, I feel sorry for her. You saw Nicolas Maduro in handcuffs. You saw him in leg chains, he and his wife. Now, quite frankly, it's a complete breach of international law and practice that you have a sitting president, of a sovereign country brought to your country, being kidnapped in the dead of night, and then manacled and chained. Now, unfortunately for acting President Delcy Rodriguez, she has invisible handcuffs, invisible leg irons. She is basically coming on the instructions of the United States, and the instructions are sell as much oil as you can to the Indians.
But then, that is not dissuading India from recognizing Venezuela as a sovereign free country. is it? And on top of it, if you take a look at the Indian oil imports, the imports from Venezuela have increased in May. They are going to increase more in June. Before the sanctions were imposed by US government in 2019, India's oil imports from Venezuela peaked before nosediving because of the the sanctions that had been imposed and the deterrence mechanisms that had been used by the then US government. So and is it just a coincidence that you have the US trade, you have the assistant US trade representative over here in India talking about the trade deal. You have Delcy Rodriguez, the acting president of Venezuela. She is going to be meeting with the key energy industry leaders in Mumbai tomorrow. We are at this point of time in need for more oil. Yes, it suits us because we require the oil, but it suits our relationship with Washington DC as well, because we at this point of time are heeding to the advice and the recommendations and perhaps a soft arm twisting as well. We always have.
Look, I want to say very clearly that if they offer a good price and if they offer assured supplies, certainly it's something that we should consider favorably. Delcy Rodriguez has been given due honor. She's been received by high officials. She's meeting the top people in the country because we deserve to give her that honor. After all, Venezuela is sitting on the largest reserve of oil in the world. It's an important country in Latin America. Unfortunately, it has now become, in a sense, a satellite of the United States. And the US is not very popular in Latin America. Brazil, for example, there are ongoing tensions between Brazil and the United States. They have been exacerbated by President Trump meeting somebody from the Bolsonaro family, somebody who is being investigated for fraud and robbery by the current government of Lula, who, by the way, is an important member of BRICS, and again, someone who is very well known to Prime Minister Modi. It's a delicate tightrope, there's no question about it. And I think this 1% of Donald Trump, he's expecting India to buy a lot of Venezuelan oil. Well, what is the price? What is your assured supply? Because unfortunately, Trump changes his policies with the weather. You cannot rely on Donald Trump keeping a correct policy. So I would say, I'm sure the Prime Minister, who is infinitely wise in these matters, he is going to consider all these matters. But again, I repeat, Delcy Rodriguez is coming to us virtually as a prisoner. And she's coming to us to sell Venezuelan oil that will go directly to US accounts, not Venezuelan accounts.
Yes, it is. Of course it is going to US accounts. But do we have any qualms buying oil? I mean, if it serves our purpose, and it serves our purpose in building an association with DC as well, the question is, why not? Sharad Kohli, let's bring in the numbers as well and getting your economic point of view. There has been a very straight statement that has been made by the Ministry of External Affairs as well, that the Indian energy companies are looking to expand their stronghold in Venezuela. The fact that there has been a forum that has been organized in Mumbai, especially for the president of Venezuela to meet Adani and Ambani and JSW and the others and Tata Power, is simply for the reason that Venezuela is here to sell oil. We are opening up and diversifying ourselves into buying Venezuelan oil. Until the time that the Iran war continues, perhaps we have the leeway of buying more Russian oil. If you take a look month on month, the number of times the graph has fallen, dropped and then gone up is staggering. It depends on how America lifts those sanctions and reimposes them. So what do you think the situation is, and how should India be looking at its energy needs?
Good evening, Megha, to you, my fellow panelists and the viewers. I think situation is quite evolving. So long as Mr. Donald Tariff is in power, you will see things happening here and there. I was shocked, Megha, when I saw, this Brendan Lynch and company coming and discussing and threatening us with 12.5% tariffs. Because supposedly we are amongst the 60 countries where we're using, forced labor. I think they were back in the 17th or 18th century when forced labor was being used. I think they're still reminded of slavery, which used to happen from Africa and other places. They're still in the same era. And they just needed an excuse to take recourse to Section 301B of the US Trade Act 1974 to levy extra tariffs. He just wants to collect extra tariffs this way or that way. His whole reciprocal tariff policy has been thrown out the window by Supreme Court. And he knows he's got either Section 301, where he proves that there are unfair, in inverted commas, trade practices happening in India, where India is supplying goods, some forced labor, bandhuwa majdoori, or zabran majdoori, whatever they want to call it. This is happening. I just fail to understand.
No, but also it's mostly about the fact that India is importing goods or raw materials from countries, particularly China, which is using forced labor. By that we understand, sweatshops, and those are quite prevalent. You go to Thailand, you go to China particularly. So I think that's the inference that I'm going to draw from this mooting of the 12.5% tariffs on 60 countries, including India and several others as well. But again, of course, there are.
Let me answer your question, Megha.
Yeah.
I think you are being too kind to Donald Trump. I think by passing on the excuse that we are buying. No, there are a lot of products, Megha, which are being manufactured wholly in India. And he's even trying to prove that there is forced labor engaged in that. So I refute that. I condemn this. After when Brendan Lynch and company is here, and a discussion should have taken place in a congenial and cordial atmosphere, not under an atmosphere of threat, where you're putting 12.5%. I think this deal is never going to happen. This deal is going to go till the year 2200. I'm telling you, this is never going to happen. This will just drag on, and there'll be newer conditions. And I agree with Professor Nalapat. Donald Trump cannot stay on a decision. So whatever these chamchas are discussing here, that is not going to be ratified by him anyway. He need to go and ask his Chachaji whether he's going to agree to that. I'm sorry. I have no trust and zero faith.
Fair enough. We may have our sentiments, and we may have strong sentiments, but when we take a look at our foreign policy and our trade policy, Ambassador Basuti Mukherjee, we just saw yesterday, we had Piyush Goyal talking with Sergio Gore.
You can't brush it up.
You have this assistant US state representative who's over here with his team.
I'll have to quit the show. If you don't let me finish. I'm sorry.
No, please. I gave you ample time, but then okay. Another 30 seconds before I get in my other panelist.
This is truth, Megha. This is truth. Are you not a witness to what has happened since 2nd of April 2025? Are you not a witness to that? You think these are sentiments? This is what has happened in our country. I'm sorry. I'm surprised that you're calling these sentiments. These are not sentiments.
I'm just saying, are we at this point of time? When there are phone calls that are being made, and you have the President of United States of America saying that I'm a big fan of Modi and I love India, and when you have Sergio Gore holding meetings with the Union Commerce Minister, and the Union Commerce Minister comes out and says no less that yes, we are looking forward to a trade deal. Are these just optics? Is this a narrative that is being set to, I don't know, please the Americans, please the domestic market, our trade deficit at this point of time, you have our currency at 95 to a dollar, and it continues to depreciate. We are the worst performers in Asia itself. So at this point of time, we are doing a lot. And do you think a trade deal will help us in bringing some economic stability in our country? Is the question. Ambassador Basuti Mukherjee, let's hear it from you with regards to the optics versus what do you think is the reality of this trade deal? While I'm transgressing from this conversation, in fact, I was to have this debate at 8:30 p.m. on the mooting of the 12.5% tariffs, the larger discussion about a number of these leaders, high-level meetings. You had Myanmar president, you have the Venezuela, acting president, you had the Quad foreign ministers, you had of course Marco Rubio. All of them have been in India, one after other. In fact, sometimes these visits have been overlapping as well. What is the big indication here?
Look, the
And
fact
is that question addressed
Yeah,
to
Ambassador,
me?
let Ambassador Mukherjee speak. I'll come to you, Professor Nalapat.
that Donald Trump wants to sell his agricultural products to India. He wants to sell what they call corn.
But yes, we are buying it. We are buying the corn. We are already buying the corn from America.
No, I'm sorry. We have got hundreds of millions of farmers dependent on production and marketing of their produce, and this will deprive hundreds of millions of our farmers for the benefit of a few tens of millions who will benefit Donald Trump in the 2026 November election. So please, Megha, the issues are very big. The issues involve hundreds of millions of Indian people, and Prime Minister Modi certainly knows that. External Affairs Minister knows that. Commerce Minister will know that. The National Security Advisor will know that. So please understand, his game is basically to say that agriculture is forced labor. You have to buy our stuff. And if you buy American allowed to flood the Indian market.
Fair enough.
For grain,
Fair enough.
it's a disaster for the Indian agricultural industry.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Of course, there are ways and means that there are going to be rules that are going to be twisted. There are going to be amendments that are going to be brought in. Whether we are going to buy into that entire web that has been woven in terms of forcing us to pay more tariffs to United States of America remains to be seen. But yes, Ambassador Mukherjee, the question is to you this about the larger picture, about all these leaders who are in India, who just left India a few weeks ago, this momentum that continues in the coming days and weeks and months as well. What is this indicative of?
It just indicates that these are photo ops and nothing more. Because the UN definition of forced labor, Megha, is indenture and slavery. Nothing else. There is neither indenture. We were the victim of indenture. I've written a book on it. Fortunately, we were not victim of slavery that was perpetrated on the Africans. Therefore, to say that we have forced labor and therefore tariff will be imposed is really stretching it too far. The sweatshops that you are talking about, that is not forced labor. That is labor under unhygienic conditions. Or for instance, I remember there used to be, the Americans used to use this jargon, that are people in prison who have not been given a fair trial. Are they being forced to make products for which they don't share the profit and it's taken away from them? That has never happened in India. So under those circumstances, I have to come to the conclusion, like Dr. Sharad Kohli said, that these are semantics, Megha, emanating from a man who does not trust his closest inner circle. Therefore, just because the American ambassador can pick up the phone and get Trump on the phone and Trump says Modi is my best friend, it doesn't mean that our problems are solved. Our problems will only be solved if we have an agreement which serves the national interests of our own people as much as it serves the national interests of the American people. That is how a trade deal is negotiated. It cannot be imposed upon us in this manner. You were also talking about Venezuelan oil, etc. We have refineries, a couple of them, good ones, which can refine heavy Venezuelan oil, and we are ready to do so. We are also ready to look at all reasonable methods by which we can come to a trade agreement. But when as I agree with you, Megha, when you said the Commerce Minister came out and said that we now just have to fill up the commas and full stop. I would tell him as a professional diplomat that in the past, so many agreements have faltered because the comma was put in the wrong place, because the full stop should not have been there. A comma and a full stop in an agreement on trade or diplomacy can make or break a deal. So I would respectfully tell the Commerce Minister, sir, which comma and which full stop are you talking about? Where is going to figure the document, etc. We have to see the document, Megha, as professionals, you and I, to decide whether it is in India's interest or not. Megha.
Okay, all right. I again just want to, I want to read out this particular news article that goes on to give you the nitty-gritties of what is this 12.5% of the tariff that the Americans are proposing to impose on these 60 countries, including India. One particular clause that India, quote unquote, is an intermediary in the cotton supply chains linked to the Chinese forced labor input. So yes, there are any kind of permutations and combinations at this point of time are being concocted by the US Department of Commerce to bring about, invent the ways in which tariffs may be imposed on these countries after that the Supreme Court has completely shut down the executive order of Donald Trump to impose tariffs on India and other parts of the world. Again, this is a way to squeeze India, those 12.5% tariffs or more eventually. But at the end of the day, it remains a decision that must be made by the Congress in the United States of America. It has to be passed in the Senate. It has to be passed in the House of Representatives. So it's going to be a long drawn battle for Trump once again. Let me also get in Shruti Das Gupta. She's a foreign affairs expert. Shruti, in terms of, what is it that we have been able to get from all these visits? You have the UK Foreign Secretary. Our deal at this point of time is going through some problems with the United Kingdom. It was to be operationalized, hasn't happened. So there are issues with regards to the import curbs of steel that the United Kingdom at this point of time has started to impose, which is a pain point for India. Again, the issue of immigration curbs that have been imposed have reduced the number of Indian skilled labor traveling to United Kingdom. How do you see all these kinks being ironed out?
Well, under the CETA that was signed, I believe the Mission 2035 is UK-India's bilateral trade agreement. And under that, there has to be a systematic annual review that occurs between the Foreign Secretary and India's EAM. And this particular meeting is occurring just because of that particular element. And they're going to, of course, as you said, iron out the devil in the details and try and figure out how to make the deal work for both nations. As of now, they're focusing on, I believe there has been agreement between IIT Dhanbad and Cambridge to share information on critical minerals, because that supply chain is heavily impacted by weaponization of trade and tariffs. We've also had other EV-related electric vehicles and green energy-related agreements with them. We are working things out slowly and steadily. Just because a CETA is there in place, just because we've had an agreement that has been inked, that doesn't mean it goes into force immediately. In case there are some problems in happening it through, as Ambassador Mukherjee rightly said, every full stop and comma matters, and sometimes these agreements can be put aside because the comma was in the wrong place and it led to an implication that would not be in favor of whichever nation that is raising the objection. So this annual observation, there has been an increase in trade, 11% if I'm not wrong, with EU and UK, and we've seen that it is progress, but not whole and complete. Coming back to the Venezuela question where we all began this conversation from, Venezuela owes India more than 600 million in dividends only. ONGC Videsh has invested 700 million already there. So assets and everything included, it owes India a whole lot. So Delcy Rodriguez is being frog marched here by USA to have Indian refiners agree to take back oil, is putting us back exactly where we stopped in 2019, where 9 to 10% of Venezuelan oil was flowing into Indian economy. The US sanctions stopped it. The US sanctions are lifted. Now she's being frog marched to India so that India will accept it. We know that there is something like about $5 to $8 of discount that we are looking at the Brent crude price. So India is making, whether it is with the Foreign Secretary of UK, whether it is with Delcy Rodriguez, as a prisoner, as Dr. Sharad Kohli said, or to her own, to Donald Trump's tariff regime, we are looking at India being an important focal point in global economics. Everybody comes here not just for the photo ops, they need to make their nations look good. It is also where the entire choke point of global economy is coming. They need an alternative for China, and they have looked at and analyzed as India as being a good point of concentration. So this is not impressions. This is going to flow into
what's wrong in resuming our imports from Venezuela? We used to do so, as you mentioned, 2019 is when we stopped doing that, at least reduced it to a large percentage. And of course, I don't think we have the moral scruples of questioning United States of America for having captured Maduro and installing a puppet regime under its leadership, under Trump's leadership. But okay, all right. So those are the salient points of these visits that are happening, that have already happened, that are going to happen in the coming days and weeks. So it's going to be interesting situation when it comes to foreign policy of India with its neighborhood, with Europe, with North America, and we'll keep a close, and Asia as well. We'll keep a close eye on that. I thank all of you for joining me on the telecast and sharing your views. Thanks so much.